Hey everybody, Dr. Todd Brennan. So today we figured we'd do an important video with the military, right? Because we have lots of military, lots of foot problems. Unfortunately, the boots they're issued are not the best in the world. They're pretty flimsy, and therefore that leads to a lot of foot, ankle, knee, hip, shoulder, whatever problems. So we figured we'd shoot this as a way to say, listen, it's important to get this checked while you're military. There's multiple reasons to that, right? The last thing you want to do is get out of the military and not have your feet addressed, and then you're fighting tooth and nail with the military to say, hey, these are issues that I sustained or problems that I sustained while I was active duty. Again, that's important from the standpoint of retirement, because as you retire and you can get benefits and whatnot at the VA, that's where service connection comes into play. And then you get that care, that free care that you're obliged to because of what you sustained while you were active duty. For today, there's a couple different things that you look at, right? I mean, we just kind of do a general foot evaluation. Specifically, this gentleman, we've had issues with his big toe joints. And again, we'll kind of walk our way through it as we go. But when you talk about the lack of support with the boots, as his feet pronate and flatten out, you get more torque at the joint. So when his toe moves, he gets more jamming at the top of the joint. That then causes pain and irritation to the tendon and the capsule on the top of the joint. How does that affect other parts of the body? Well, now he walks differently, right? So his feet hurt. When his feet hurt, the ankles and the knees are going to pick up the slack to try to adjust to those painful areas because he's compensating. So that could lead to any type of ankle pain, whether it's on the front of the ankle or the back along the Achilles, or even up into the knee where you talk about the patellar tendon, IT band, those types of things. The other thing for the military personnel that are jumping out of planes, those types of things, there's hard landings. It's not like you're landing on a big cushion. So those hard landings can have quite an impact on the foot and how it progresses, whether it's arthritic changes or other pains or problems within the foot itself, right? So it is important, again, to get this stuff checked now for long-term benefits. All right, the goal is not just to help now, but it's also to make sure once you retire as a military personnel, you're getting the benefits that you deserve, right? Especially while serving. So that's kind of what we look at with most of the military personnel. I always tell it's important to the military personnel that we treat to make sure you do this, because again, it's a lot harder to fight and go backwards in time and try to get the proper medical documentation, whatnot that you need, then get it all up front and get it done now, right? Every military personnel, when they retire, I believe they go through, right, a full physical type of thing. So don't be afraid to talk about what hurts, regardless of how minor it is. And it doesn't even have to be with the feet, anywhere in the body, because again, that potentially is just going to get worse as you get older and as your body starts to kind of slow down. So it's super important to get that stuff checked out. Let me make sure too, while I'm hitting, other than your toes, your knees were hurting too, you said, right? Was there something else that was bothering you?
No, it's mostly just that obviously you've been treating me for the flat feet,
right,
and the fallen arches and the plantar fasciitis, but I've noticed that I've been getting when I'm running, I'm getting some pain in the back part of my ankle, and then I've been getting a lot of pressure on my knees.
The knees, okay, got it. So we'll kind of start here, motion-wise in the big toe, right? When the toe comes up, I mean, it kind of stops about there. You do want the toe to come up a little bit further than that. So that's something what we would call hallux limitus, meaning the big toe joint, the motion is limited. And therefore what happens, again, when it moves, you get jamming, and that can lead to pain. So that's kind of starts up in the ball of the foot. Now, other little things to point out, right? The way that the toe kind of curls in, that's kind of what we consider a hammer toe. Doesn't necessarily hurt him now, but again, it's still worth documenting and pointing out from a standpoint of retirement for him. Then as we work our way back and you look at the foot, right? When we load the foot, all right, you can kind of see that he's got a flattened arch here, right? And that's worth pointing out because of some of the other issues that he's run into. One being plantar fasciitis, which is going to be pain in the heel or along the arch of the foot, because as his foot pronates, it puts more pressure on that area. The second is dealing with some pain back here on the inside of the ankles, on the medial aspect of the ankles. And that's probably one of two things. One would be the Achilles. So the Achilles comes down and fans out on the back of the heel. The Achilles is interconnected with the plantar fascia, so it's not unusual to get a combination of both of those problems. Second would be what's called the posterior tibial tendon. It starts deep in the calf. It comes down in this area to the foot. So what happens is when you're walking, running, jogging, when you're wearing really flat shoes, what happens is the foot pronates and it puts more torque and strain on that tendon, which causes more discomfort and irritation. Now again, as we progress up to the knee, you know, this gentleman's getting kind of anterior medial knee pain because of the pull of the patellar tendon. Now that's going to be secondarily again because of his issues with the feet. Whether or not he has problems or pains with the feet, his foot is functioning abnormally because of pronation and flattening out, which is how the body adjusts for it. If you don't have the right support or you don't have a good boot or shoe, it's going to eventually catch up to you. So the best way to envision it, right, is if the foot pronates, right, and the ankle joint kind of torques one way, the knee itself is going to torque the opposite way to compensate for those shifts, those torsional changes or those rotational changes. That's going to cause either impingement, depending on what side of the knee is bothering them, or stretching irritation of the tendons or the ligaments, basically, in this scenario. So, you know, again, going back to documentation and retirement for the military, again, we're looking at 5 to 6 different things that you may just kind of push to the side and be like, I'm getting old, it's just sore. But these are all big things that always have the possibility of progression. You know, for up here, it could progress to arthritic changes to then need surgical intervention. Same thing for plantar fascia, Achilles tendonitis. You can develop spurring, you can develop chronic irritation of the area. You can develop some tenosynovitis or inflammation of the tendon. And then same thing with the knee. You know, you can develop arthritic changes to the knee because of the functionality of the foot. And that can work its way up to the hip as well. So it may seem small at first, but it's important to address it when it bothers you, especially once you're in the military, because nothing is harder than fighting the government to try to get your old notes, assuming they don't lose them, right? Well, you know, we started off pretty basic with him, and you know, we went through the basics of icing it and stretching it, you know, especially for the plantar fascia and the Achilles, but it's also making sure we got good support inside the boot. So there's an orthotic in here. I'm not going to try to get it out, but basically getting an orthotic like this, right, that's custom molded to his foot. And what that's going to do is a couple things. One is it's going to take and hold his arch up better to take the pressure off the plantar fascia, posterior tibial tendon, and the Achilles tendon. It's also going to align the foot in a better, more neutral position, which is the optimal position for the foot to function in. By doing so, it's going to take the pressure off the ankle, the knee, and the hip. It's going to realign. So we talked about that lining. By having the orthotic, it's going to make everything more congruent and neutral, okay? The last thing it's going to do is it's going to help decrease some of the pull to this tendon, and in theory, decrease some of the jamming he's getting in the toe. And there's some adjustments that, you know, we obviously made for his specific foot, but those are just kind of the basics. And a lot of stuff that we see with the foot and the ankle, especially military, can be corrected with a good orthotic. There's some things that, you know, for this, for instance, the hallux limitus, it's probably more of a slowing the progression, so hopefully it doesn't get issues in the future. The other things, yeah, you're fixing the problem by providing the support. You're taking the abnormal pressure points off of these tendon insertions, therefore the pain feels better. You're realigning the foot, the ankle, the knee, the hip to decrease the chance or the likelihood of arthritic buildup or, you know, tendinitises or whatever it may be, or impingement. So, you know, when you get to the basis, you're fixing these issues by providing the best support. You're not just band-aiding it up. So with all that said, like we've mentioned before, it's important, especially for military, you know, the military that are on their feet and not the best shoes in the world, to get this stuff addressed and fixed as soon as you can so that you have the proper paper trail while you're active duty. Don't just sweep it under the rug and say it's something small or minuscule, especially when we're dealing with the feet, because as you can see here, it is a domino effect. One thing hurts, it can open up kind of Pandora's box for 3, 4, 5 other things. So it's important to get it addressed, but also get it fixed. So long term, you're in better hands and your feet feel better, but also you're being preventative for other issues to arise.